The first thing Clara noticed wasn't the chandeliers. It wasn't the champagne. It was the child no one looked at. In a ballroom full of wealth and laughter, a boy sat alone in the corner, perfectly still, while the world stepped around him as if he didn't exist. Clara noticed because she knew what invisibility felt like, and because some silences were louder than music. The Rosewood Hotel ballroom glowed like a jewelry box, crystal light spilling over gowns that whispered when their owners moved. Clara slipped between bodies with a tray balanced on her palm, smiling the way she'd been trained to smile. Small, harmless, easy to ignore. "Champagne, ma'am." A woman in emeralds took a glass without meeting her eyes. Clara's wrist ached. 2 hours into an 8-hour gala and her heels already felt like punishment. She told herself to focus on rent, on the bills on her counter, on Rose's sleepy face when Clara had dropped her at her mother's earlier. Just keep moving. A man in a midnight suit clipped her shoulder hard enough to rattle the glasses. "Watch it," he snapped, as if Clara had stepped into his path on purpose. "I'm sorry, sir," Clara murmured, steadying the tray with practiced precision. That was when she saw him again, in the corner. The boy sat alone at a round table too big for him, his legs dangling above the carpet. While the other children darted between adults, chasing laughter and sugar, he stayed still, absorbed in something only he understood. Fork, knife, spoon. He aligned them, separated them, aligned them again. Order. Repetition. Calm. His suit was tailored charcoal with a burgundy bow tie, too elegant for someone small enough to still have baby softness in his cheeks. Dark lashes shadowed his eyes as he worked, brows drawn tight with concentration. And no one touched his table except to take from it. A couple drifted near him, murmuring, and without acknowledging the boy at all, they lifted 2 empty chairs and carried them away. The boy didn't look up. He didn't flinch. Clara's throat tightened anyway. "Clara, table 6 needs napkins," Marcos hissed as he passed, clipboard pressed to his chest. "Dessert service in 20. Clara nodded, but her gaze kept snagging on the corner like a hook in cloth. The room shifted. Not music, something else. A ripple of attention. A sudden straightening of spines, voices lowering, smiles forming too fast. Alexander. Clara didn't need to have seen his face before to know him. Harbor City carried his name like a warning, spoken in half-jokes, whispered in elevators, used to end arguments. He moved through the crowd and the crowd moved for him. Tall, broad-shouldered, black suit fitted like it had been tailored around danger. Dark hair touched by silver at the temples. A scar traced his jawline, pale as an old threat. 2 men flanked him with the quiet precision of trained shadows. But it was his eyes that held Clara's breath, dark, unreadable, scanning the room like he was counting exits. He didn't stop for handshakes. He didn't slow for compliments. He walked straight to the boy. At the corner table, Alexander placed a hand on the child's shoulder, not heavy, not possessive, anchoring. He leaned down and spoke close to the boy's ear. The boy nodded once, still staring at the silverware. Alexander straightened and the softness vanished so fast Clara wondered if she'd imagined it. A woman in a crimson dress approached him, smile ready. Alexander took her hand briefly, said something Clara couldn't hear. The woman glanced at the boy and said something else. Whatever it was, Alexander's gaze sharpened. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. The woman's smile broke. She retreated like she'd touched a hot stove. Clara turned away, tray trembling slightly, and forced herself back into motion. She shouldn't care. She couldn't afford to care. But when the orchestra slid into a waltz and parents began pulling children onto the floor, Clara's eyes found the corner again. The boy had stopped arranging silverware. He was watching the dancers, his hands folded too neatly, his expression caught between longing and confusion, as if he understood the rule but not the entrance. Clara set her tray down on the nearest empty table. Her heart thudded once. and suddenly the noise felt far away. Then she walked toward him. Clara crouched beside the boy's chair, keeping a careful distance. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Clara." The boy's gaze fixed near her shoulder, not her eyes. Up close she saw the order in him, hands folded, suit perfect, breath measured like he was counting inside. "What's your name?" she asked. "Leon," he answered, precise as a label. "Leon." Clara let it land gently. "Would you like to dance?" A pause stretched. "I am male," Leon said, as if correcting her. Clara swallowed a smile. "That's okay. Boys dance too. I'm asking you. I don't know how." "I can show you," Clara said. "And you can say no." She offered her hand, palm up, and didn't move closer. Leon stared at it as if it were a rule he had to understand before touching. Then he placed his small palm onto hers with deliberate care. "Okay," he said. Clara helped him down from the chair. He moved carefully, like every step needed approval. She guided him to the edge of the dance floor where there was more space and less noise. "My mom taught me a trick," Clara whispered. "Stand on my shoes." Leon stepped onto her pumps. Her toes screamed, but she kept her face calm. She took his hands lightly, leaving room between their bodies, and began to sway. "Side to side," she murmured. 1, 2, 3. Leon repeated the count under his breath, perfectly in rhythm. His shoulders loosened by a fraction. "You're doing it," Clara said. Leon's gaze lifted slightly, almost landing on her eyes. A faint softness flickered across his mouth, like the start of a smile he wasn't sure he was allowed to have. Clara hummed the melody. After a moment, Leon hummed too, steady and exact. The room went quiet around them. The orchestra played, but conversations faded into nothing. Faces turned their way, curious, offended, startled by a waitress and a boy in a tailored suit taking up space. And across the floor stood Alexander. Clara knew him without wanting to. Harbor City carried his name like a warning. Black suit, scar along his jaw. Two men behind him that moved like shadows. His eyes locked on Clara. She kept swaying, kept counting for Leon, pretending the stare wasn't pressure on her skin. Alexander started walking. He didn't hurry. The crowd split for him without being asked. "Dad's coming," Leon said matter-of-factly, still counting. Clara's voice went thin. "Is that okay?" Leon nodded once. His fingers tightened slightly around hers. Alexander stopped at the edge of their small circle. Up close, Clara caught expensive cologne with smoke underneath. "Miss," he said. "Sir," Clara managed. "May I cut in?" Clara's mouth opened, but no sound came. Leon answered, calm and firm. "We're counting, Dad. 1, 2, 3. For one heartbeat, Alexander's face shifted, barely. Something softer moved behind his eyes. "Of course," he said, and stepped back. He stayed there, though. Not joining. Not leaving. Standing like a wall no one would dare cross. The song changed, faster. Leon adapted instantly, counting quicker. Clara twirled him carefully, and Leon made a small sound, surprise that bordered on delight. "I like dancing," Leon said, as if discovering a new fact. "I'm glad," Clara whispered. When the music ended, Leon stepped off her shoes and smoothed his jacket with solemn precision. "Thank you for the dance," he said formally. "I would like to return to my table." "Of course," Clara said, releasing his hands. "Thank you for trusting me." Leon walked straight to Alexander. Alexander's hand settled on Leon's shoulder, protective and absolute. His eyes never left Clara. "Your name," Alexander said. "Clara," she replied. "Clara," he repeated, making it sound like a decision. "You will join us." A man appeared at Clara's side so quietly she startled. Roman, broad-shouldered, expression blank. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. Clara's pulse jumped. "I'm working." "It has been arranged," Alexander said, already turning away. Clara looked for Marcos and found him across the room, suddenly fascinated by a chandelier. She followed. At the corner table, Leon returned to his silverware, humming the waltz like the room didn't exist. Alexander pulled out a chair for Clara with a gesture that felt almost normal, which somehow made it worse. Clara sat, hands tight in her lap. Alexander's gaze didn't soften. "Why did you do it?" Clara swallowed. "Because he was alone." Silence. Heavy. Loaded. Then Alexander's eyes narrowed, like he'd made up his mind about something. "Roman," he said quietly, "get her information." Roman produced a phone, screen open to a blank contact form, and held it out. Clara stared at the empty lines, realizing her life was about to be rewritten by whatever she typed next. Roman's phone felt heavier than it should have. Clara typed her name, her number, her address, every letter a quiet surrender. Roman took the phone back without comment and vanished into the crowd. The gala ended without ceremony for her. By morning, gray rain pressed against the bus shelter as Clara hugged her jacket tighter and watched water pool at the curb. Rose slept curled around her purple stuffed rabbit, safe at her mother's apartment for a few more hours. Clara told herself the night was over. Then Roman showed up at the diner. He stood by the door in a dark suit that didn't belong among vinyl booths and syrup bottles, hands folded, eyes scanning like he was memorizing exits. "Clara," Common whispered. "He's asking for you." Clara's stomach dropped. Roman handed her an envelope. Cream paper. Her name written in careful ink. "Mr. Alexander requests your presence after your shift," Roman said. "A car will be waiting." "I can't," Clara said automatically. "I have my daughter." Roman's gaze didn't flicker. "Arrangements were made with your mother." Ice slid down Clara's spine. After her shift, Clara sat alone in the restroom and opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside was a handwritten note, brief, controlled, and beneath it, a check. $5,000. Her breath caught hard enough to hurt. Enough to fix the car. Enough to clear the rent. Enough to breathe. The black sedan waited exactly where Roman said it would. 40 minutes later, iron gates opened silently and the car rolled onto a drive lined with ancient trees. The mansion rose from the cliffside like something carved to intimidate the sea. Inside, everything echoed. Marble. Glass. Space that swallowed sound. Alexander waited in the library. No suit this time. Dark slacks. White shirt open at the collar. He looked less like a public figure and more like a man who didn't expect to be questioned. "You're afraid," he said. "Yes," Clara replied. A pause. Then the corner of his mouth lifted almost imperceptibly. "Good," he said. "It means you understand risk." Clara placed the envelope on the table between them. "I can't accept this." "You already have," Alexander said calmly. "For Leon," Clara corrected. "Not for me." Alexander studied her in silence that pressed down like weight. "My son does not connect easily." "I noticed," Clara said softly. "He spoke of you this morning," Alexander continued. "He does not speak of people." The admission landed harder than Clara expected. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "You saw him," Alexander replied. "That is rare." He didn't touch the check. He didn't push it back. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. "I want to offer you a position." Clara blinked. "A position?" "You will spend time with Leon," he said. 3 days a week. After school hours. You will engage him without agenda. And my daughter, she is welcome. The number he named next made Clara's vision blur. Per week. Clara laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. That's impossible. Alexander's gaze sharpened. Your time has value. What's the catch? Clara asked. There is none. She held his stare. That's not true. Silence stretched. Finally, Alexander stood and walked to the window overlooking the bay. Last night my son danced for 17 minutes, he said. He smiled. He counted. He trusted. He turned back to her. That moment was priceless. Something in his voice cracked just enough to let truth through. I need time, Clara said quietly. You have 3 days, Alexander replied. Wednesday. Before she could stand, he reached into his jacket and set something on the table. The stress star. Worn now. Softened from use. He wanted you to see, Alexander said. He takes care of what matters to him. Her chest tightened. Would you like to see him? Alexander asked. Leon's room was order and color and light. He greeted Clara with careful joy, showed her books, models, his music box. When it was time to leave, Leon asked one question. Will you come back? Clara looked to Alexander. He didn't answer for her. I hope so, Clara said. That night, walking home with the envelope in her bag and Rose's small hand in hers, Clara understood something she hadn't before. She hadn't just stepped into Alexander's world. She had been invited inside. 3 weeks changed everything. Clara learned the mansion's rhythms the way she once learned bus schedules, quietly, out of necessity. She learned which hallways Leon preferred, which rooms he avoided, how the house softened when afternoon light filled the garden room. Leon waited for them now. Not at the door. Not rushing. Just standing, precise and ready, eyes lifting the moment Clara and Rose entered. You're on time, Leon said every visit. 4 minutes early. Rose beamed like it was a medal. Clara watched him with a kind of ache she didn't name. The careful way he arranged objects before beginning an activity. The way he explained rules before inviting Rose in. The way he looked toward his father, not for permission, but reassurance. Alexander stayed nearby without hovering. He worked while they played, leather portfolio open, phone silent more often than not. When Leon spoke, Alexander listened. Fully. Completely. Clara noticed that more than anything else. She noticed Alexander noticing her too. Not openly. Not like hunger. Like assessment changing shape. One afternoon, as Leon and Rose built a symmetrical tower from wooden blocks, Alexander spoke without looking at Clara. There is something you should know. Clara felt the shift before the words landed. About Leon? No, Alexander said. About danger. Her spine tightened. What kind of danger? A business matter, he replied. A man who believes threats are leverage. Is Leon safe? Clara asked immediately. Alexander turned then. His expression was absolute. Always. That word carried weight. Promise and threat braided together. And Rose? Clara asked. A pause. She is connected to you, Alexander said carefully. Which means I will extend protection. Clara's breath caught. Protection how? Discreetly, he said. You will not see them. You will not feel them. I don't want armed men near my daughter, Clara said, sharper than she intended. Alexander didn't bristle. He nodded once. Then I will ensure she never knows. Silence stretched. Beyond the glass, guards patrolled the perimeter, their presence a reminder Clara couldn't unsee. How serious is this? She asked. Alexander's jaw tightened. Serious enough. Leon's voice drifted over. The tower needs reinforcement. Rose, hold this piece. Rose obeyed solemnly. Clara watched them, heart caught between gratitude and fear. 1 week, she said finally. We'll accept the security for 1 week. Then we reassess. Alexander studied her, then inclined his head. Reasonable. That night, as Clara tucked Rose into bed in the apartment she could finally afford, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. She had wanted safety. She hadn't realized how close safety sat to control. Leon's birthday arrived with quiet precision. No balloons screaming color. No crowd. Just order and intention. Books wrapped in blue paper. Scientific kits arranged by size. A cake decorated with constellations. Leon stood straighter than usual, pride flickering beneath restraint. "You came," he said to Clara, then to Rose. "That is good." Alexander watched his son from across the room, expression unreadable until Leon smiled. Then it softened. Clara caught it. Later, while Leon catalogued gifts with Roman's patient assistance, Alexander stepped beside Clara near the terrace. "You see why this matters," he said quietly. "Yes," Clara replied. He hesitated. "A rare thing." "There are risks," he said. "I did not intend for you to carry them." "I chose this," Clara said. "For Leon. For Rose." "And for yourself?" Alexander asked. The question hung between them, sharp and intimate. Clara didn't answer. Instead, she watched Leon show Rose how to line up the stars on his new chart, her daughter listening with reverent seriousness. Alexander's hand brushed hers. Just once. Just enough. Clara didn't pull away. She didn't lean in either. The night ended without incident. But as Clara drove home, security car a shadow 2 streets back, she understood something had shifted. Not danger. Alignment. She was no longer a guest in Alexander's world. She was being accounted for. The call came just after midnight. Clara was awake anyway, sitting at the small kitchen table with a mug gone cold in her hands, listening to Rose breathe through the baby monitor. The apartment was quiet in the way only new safety could be, unfamiliar, fragile. Her phone lit up. Alexander. She stared at the screen for a full breath before answering. "Is Leon okay?" she asked. "Yes," he said immediately. Relief loosened something in her chest. "Then what is it?" "I wanted you to hear this from me," Alexander said. "The situation is resolved." Clara closed her eyes. She didn't ask how. She didn't need to. "Does that mean the security?" "It will be reduced," he said. "Not removed, but less visible." She exhaled slowly. "Thank you." A pause followed. Not awkward. Considered. "You handled yourself well," Alexander said. "These past weeks." "So did Leon," Clara replied. "He's braver than you give him credit for." A quiet sound reached her ear, something like a breath held too long and finally released. "Yes," Alexander said. "He is." The line went dead a moment later, leaving Clara alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of something unfinished. The next afternoon, Clara brought Rose to the mansion one last time before her decision was due. Leon met them in the garden room, holding a book pressed to his chest. "I made a list," he announced, "of activities we have not completed." Rose clapped. "I like lists." Alexander watched from the doorway, unreadable. Clara knelt in front of Leon. "That's very organized." Leon nodded. "If you stop coming, the list will be incomplete." The words were careful, controlled, but Clara felt them anyway. She looked up at Alexander. He didn't interrupt. That mattered. They spent the afternoon quietly, building, reading, sitting in shared silence that felt earned rather than empty. When it was time to leave, Leon stood very still. "Will you return on Thursday?" he asked. Clara swallowed. "I need to make a decision first." Leon considered this. Decisions should be logical. They should, Clara agreed. But sometimes they're also about people. Leon nodded once. People matter. Yes, Clara said. They do. At the front door, Alexander walked Clara out alone. You do not owe me an answer, he said. If you choose to leave, the compensation remains. Consider it gratitude. That's not why this is hard, Clara said. I know. They stood facing each other, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. You changed something, Alexander said quietly. In my home. In my son. And you gave us safety when we needed it, Clara replied. Even when it cost you nothing. His gaze sharpened. It cost me restraint. The honesty startled her. Clara took a breath. If I stay, it's not because of the money. I would accept nothing less, Alexander said. She met his eyes. And if I go? Alexander's jaw tightened. Then I will still ensure Leon remembers he was seen. That was the answer she needed. I'll stay, Clara said. On my terms. Alexander inclined his head. Naturally. They shook hands. This time, his grip lingered, not possessive, not demanding. Present. As Roman drove Clara and Rose home, Rose leaned forward between the seats. Mr. A looked happy, she said. Clara smiled faintly. He doesn't smile much. He did with his eyes, Rose insisted. Clara thought of Leon counting his steps on the dance floor, of Alexander standing back instead of stepping in. Yes, Clara said. I think he did. That night, Clara lay beside Rose, listening to her daughter drift into sleep, and understood the shape of her life had changed. Not because of danger, because of choice. Somewhere across the city, a boy arranged his books with careful hands, knowing exactly when Clara would return. And a man who ruled by fear learned something quieter. That being seen was not weakness. It was power. Clara learned the sound of peace slowly. It wasn't silence. It was rhythm. Mornings came without panic now. Rose woke up laughing instead of coughing through old radiators. The refrigerator stayed full. Bills stopped arriving in red envelopes that made Clara's hands shake. But the strangest change wasn't financial. It was anticipation. Every Thursday, Leon waited by the garden room windows 5 minutes early. Not pacing. Not watching the road. Just standing where he could see the door first. Clara never made him wait. Rose ran ahead as usual, purple backpack bouncing, announcing herself with enthusiasm Leon tolerated only because it was her. You're early, Leon said, pleased. We're exactly on time, Rose corrected. Leon considered this. Acceptable. Alexander watched them from a distance that had become intentional. He no longer hovered. He no longer stood guard like a wall. He trusted the space Clara held with his son, even when instinct told him to control every variable. Trust didn't come naturally to him, but it had taken root anyway. The security presence thinned. Cars disappeared from corners. The world loosened its grip. One afternoon, while Leon read aloud to Rose, slowly, carefully, proud of his own patience, Alexander stood beside Clara at the window. You changed the atmosphere of this house, he said. Clara didn't look at him. I didn't mean to. I know, he replied. That's why it matters. Leon finished the chapter and closed the book with satisfaction. Rose listened the entire time. I like his voice, Rose said. It makes my brain calm. Leon absorbed this like a gift. Alexander watched his son smile and did not look away. That night, after Rose fell asleep in the back seat on the drive home, Clara realized something else had changed. She wasn't afraid of Alexander anymore. Cautious, yes. Aware. But not afraid. And that frightened her more than fear ever had. Weeks passed. Leon learned to ask for things instead of waiting for permission he didn't need. He learned that plans could change and still be safe. That people could leave and return. That Clara always returned. On a quiet evening, after Rose had gone upstairs to pick out a book, Alexander poured 2 glasses of water instead of whiskey and sat across from Clara at the kitchen table. "You are no longer an employee," he said. Clara blinked. "I'm not." "You are something else," he replied. "I won't define it." She studied him. "You're letting go." A pause. "Yes," Alexander said. "In pieces." That was the most honest thing he'd ever admitted to her. Leon appeared at the doorway, holding his stress star. It was worn now, edges softened by constant use. "Clara," he said, "I made a decision." She smiled. "What kind?" "A personal one," Leon replied seriously. "I will dance again if the music is correct." Clara's throat tightened. "I'd like that." Alexander watched the exchange, something unguarded passing across his face. Later, standing at the door as Clara prepared to leave, he spoke quietly. "You once asked me where my son's mother was," he said. Clara stiffened slightly. "You don't have to." "She would have liked you," Alexander said. "Because you see without demanding." The words stayed with Clara all the way home. Months later, at another charity event, smaller, quieter, Leon stood at the edge of the dance floor again. This time, he wasn't alone. Rose held one hand. Clara stood close. And Alexander watched from a respectful distance, not as a guard, not as a ruler. As a father. When the music began, Leon stepped forward on his own. He counted softly, and for the first time, the world moved with him.